Listen, I am privileged to represent the 1.6 million members of AFSCME who perform vital public services across this country. One of our sayings within our union is that AFSCME makes America happen because of the public services that we perform every single day. Now, whether you're rich or poor or somewhere in that shrinking middle class, you need clean water, you need passable roads, you need medical care, emergency services, and much, much more. Throughout this conference, you've heard a lot about the value of the public sector, the value of public services, and what public services mean to our economy. You've heard about what it means to our democratic institution, what it says about our values and the things that we hold dear. Now, before I discuss what AFSCME is doing to defend that public square, this is what these past couple of days have been about, let me tell you why these issues matter to all of us. From nurses to accountants, from EMTs to sanitation workers, AFSCME members serve at every single level of government. We understand the value of public services. We believe in public services. Our members are dedicated to providing those public services because we know how our work benefits our communities, where our members live, and where our neighbors reside. We see what happens when budgets are cut, and we see what happens when our jobs are underfunded. As union members, we also know how collective bargaining has helped to provide our families and our members and our communities a way out. All of this makes us a crucial advocate for public services, and we will continue to be that. We're going to continue to be voices for workers' rights and defenders of that public square. Now, let me just tell you what my own experience is as far as working in the public service, being exposed to the public service. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, grew up in Cleveland. My dad was a bus driver for the city of Cleveland. He was a proud ATU member, Amalgamated Transit Union Workers. As a matter of fact, he was a steward. My mother was a community activist. And after she raised my brother and me along with my father, she went back to school and became a community college professor. Became a member of AAUP, working in the public service. When I graduated from college, I became a state of Ohio employee. And I immediately joined the Ohio Civil Service Employees Association, even though at that time, in the late 1970s, we didn't have collective bargaining. But I joined OCSCA because I understood the value and I understood the importance of belonging to a union. I understood the fact that that gives you power and it gives you a seat at the table, even though we didn't have collective bargaining in Ohio at that time. We were able to get it a little bit later. I see a gentleman in the room who helped get us that, and that's Don Wasserman, who happened to be one of my mentors in AFSCME. But we were able to achieve collective bargaining in that state. And it gave dignity and respect to state workers and local government workers across Ohio. But I want to be a little bit more personal about my story. From growing up in Cleveland, if you were African American, there were 4 jobs, 4 categories, if you were African American, where if you worked in these places, you had a shot to be in the middle class. You were able to move into the middle class. One was being a bus driver. The other was working for the post office. The other was working in factories. You had the steel mills in Cleveland. And the other was being a teacher. Those were the 4 areas where African American families, if in fact they worked in those occupations, they had the ability, based upon strong unions, 3 or 4 in the public sector, by the way, having the ability to move into the middle class. These jobs were considered good jobs. They were considered good union jobs in my community. They gave people a sense of belonging. gave people a sense of purpose and status. And these jobs allowed parents, like my parents, to earn enough to take care of their families, to send me to school in order for me to do what I'm doing right now. Now, nobody was getting rich, but at the very least, you could raise your kids well, and you could look forward to a decent retirement security, if you played by the rules every single day and if you worked hard. Because they were union jobs, there was security in a process for standing up, collectively standing up for your rights. Now, as more and more of these good union jobs have disappeared, the impact, especially in our cities and our urban areas across the country, that impact has changed the environment dramatically. I don't have to tell you, you look at cities like Detroit, you look at cities like Cleveland, you look at cities like Baltimore, and I know that there's been some discussion about what's been going on there. I will say this. This is a police problem, no question, but it's a much bigger problem. And if we don't tackle the fact that people have lost hope because they don't believe that they can move up that ladder, that they can climb that ladder through public education, through training, getting a quality job that pays quality wages, if they don't believe they have that hope, I've got to tell you that there are going to be a lot more Baltimores and Fergusons all across this country. And we must do something about that. These urban crises are a reminder of the fundamental value of unions, especially in the public sector. Unionization and collective bargaining rights are connected to the ability of communities to thrive. Not only union members within those communities, but communities to thrive. They enable workers to move up that income ladder. You know, there was a Harvard University study published last year which illustrates this vividly through interactive maps of the United States. These maps show that 9 of the 10 cities for intergenerational mobility, such as Pittsburgh, such as Boston, such as San Jose, California, are in states with relatively high union density and a strong tradition of workers' rights. So I think you've got to connect the dots here. Now, our members are not only concerned about these issues because of what they mean for our own circumstances. Our union's tagline for many years was, "In the public service." In the public service. Proud to be in the public service. We have a proud history within our union. Proud history of being advocates, of standing up for workers' rights, whether it was the sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee in 1968, 1,300 African Americans going on strike for respect and dignity on the job. Whether it was Local 101 in San Jose, where a group of women got together and said that they were sick and tired of not being paid the same level of wages as men in comparable positions. And they went on strike. Or whether it was those brave sisters and brothers along with our communities who took Scott Walker on. Although we didn't win that battle, but that fight isn't over. So what do we do? What do we do about the challenges that confront us? We can't bury our heads in the sand. We know what's happening across the states and with governors and state legislatures, and now you're hearing what's happening with the Supreme Court. So what does our union do? What must the labor movement do? What must our community partners and coalition partners do? Well, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what AFSCME is doing. We're looking inwardly, and we're examining ourselves, and we're looking at what we're doing right and improving upon that, but also what we're doing wrong. We're bringing leaders together from all over the country, AFSCME leaders, to talk about the issues that confront us as a union, but issues that confront our communities, whether it's collective bargaining, wage insecurity, economic insecurity, attacks on retirement security, attack on unions. And we're coming up with a plan, coming up with a program. You know, one of the things that we found is that sometimes we don't communicate properly with our members, and we've done a lot of polling on this. Sometimes we treat, or most times we treat all of our members like they are activists, like they are willing to jump off the 14th Street Bridge if we tell them to. Well, there are a few that would do that, but not too many. Not too many. Now, that doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't say that they don't love their union or love the work that they're performing, but what it tells us is that we've got to communicate in a different kind of way. That we've got to reach out to those members and talk to them and ask them and communicate with them and look them in the eye and ask them what issues they are concerned about. And we're doing that within AFSCME. We're changing the way that we communicate with our members. And as a result, we have actually organized internally, talking with members, flipping those fair share fee payers. Since last year, we've actually organized 140,000 new members into our union, talking to them, listening to them. This is not rocket science. This is basic 101 organizing. We can't rely upon all this new technology. It's great, it's good, but nothing takes the place of talking with folks one-on-one. So we've set a goal. And that goal is over the next year, we're going to talk to 1 million members one-on-one. And we're going to train folks, our activists and our volunteer member organizers, to do just that. We've got to rethink how we connect every single day. Now, I'd like to say this, and Lisa's holding up the sign saying that I'm talking too long, but that's okay. Lisa works for me, you know? She's the director of education. Good person, too, good person. I happen to say that when I'm speaking, that sometimes I feel like within AFSCME, I'm driving around in a 1957 Chevy in 2015. Now, those of you who were around in 1957 who were driving, remember that that was a great car. That was a great car, right? But it was a great car in 1957, not 2015. And what we've got to do is we've got to change our model. And we've got to change our structure. And we've got some structures within AFSCME that need changing, that have been around for many, many years, that they don't make any sense. But politically, we've been afraid to do so. We don't have an opportunity or the opportunity to let that continue. In the state of Wisconsin, where Scott Walker took us on, we had 3 affiliates. One state, city, county, and Milwaukee, and the rest cities and counties across that state. 3 affiliates that would sometimes be fighting one another rather than fighting who they needed to fight. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Appleton, Wisconsin. Based upon what happened, losing collective bargaining, we've re-energized and recharged in that state. So now we have one council within that state. We unified those 3 councils so we could have more power and we could target our resources in a better kind of way. We're working very, very closely with the AFL-CIO and with our partners, the AFL, not only the AFL, but NEA, SEIU, and AFT, to develop a plan and develop strategies to coordinate our resources, to coordinate our work. And we're also working outside of the labor movement with our coalition partners because we can't do it alone. We're forging those coalitions. This is not, again, hard. This is hard, but it's not rocket science. It's what we must do to face the attacks and to be prepared for these kinds of attacks. So those are the kinds of things that we're struggling with, that my union is struggling with, that other unions are struggling with. But I'm the kind of guy that looks at the glass as being half full, not half empty. I think that if we do this, and we're honest with one another, and we are not afraid to make the necessary changes, to develop more programs and enlist our membership, talk with them, not run away from them, engage them, and engage our communities, then I think that we can overcome the challenges that you've heard about the past couple of days. We're ready to do it, but let me say this, and I'll end with this. You know, I talk about this all the time, about the value of the labor movement in this country, not just the public sector movement, but the private sector movement. And we cannot have a healthy labor movement until we start rebuilding that private sector. But we need help. We need support. I mean, I can talk until I'm blue in the face about linking the labor movement to a strong middle class, to increasing wages, having retirement security. But that noise machine on the other side has been very, very effective. And you hear it constantly that we're bad people, that we don't do good things. They've got an effective noise machine. We've got to have an effective noise machine ourselves. And we're looking and we're asking for validators outside of the labor movement who understand the value, who understand the importance of working families having the ability, number one, to join unions, but also understand this connection, that whether you are in a union or not, you benefit from the work that labor unions do all over this country. We cannot let that slip away from us. We don't have the opportunity to just forget about this and bury our heads in the sand. We've got to be in charge, and we've got to fight like never before with our partners to make sure that this does not happen. It's going to be hard, but it's not insurmountable. So we just say, let's get the job done within AFSCME, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Thank you very much.